Pastor Kasia here. And look, I'm in my office. That's probably the first time I'm recording SermonLink in my office since March. And so it's good to be back here. I hope you and your families are doing okay and coping with everything that is happening in the world. Today I hope that just this short video, this short reflection might lift you up, might support you, might remind you of God's love, compassion, that you are not alone. So let's look at the passage for this week. I'm preaching on one of the most familiar stories in the Gospels. It is actually, this story is mentioned in all four Gospels. And you probably know what I'm going to say. This is the story of the feeding of 5,000. And so I wanted to read that first. For some of you, this story might be familiar. For some of you, might not. But so I invite you to hear this story with new and fresh outlook, and maybe there will be words or phrases that will kind of stuck out to you for the first time in this passage. So let us hear it together. Now when Jesus heard this, he withdrew from there in a boat to a deserted place by himself. But when the crowds heard it, they followed him on foot from the towns. When he went ashore, he saw a great crowd, and he had compassion on them and cured their sick. When it was evening, the disciples came to him and said, "This is a deserted place, and the hour is now late. Send the crowds away so that they may go into the villages and buy food for themselves." Jesus said to them, "They need not go away. You give them something to eat." They replied, "We have nothing here but 5 loaves and 2 fish. And he said, "Bring them here to me." Then he ordered the crowds to sit down on the grass. Taking the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, he looked up to heaven, blessed it, and broke the loaves, and gave them to the disciples, and the disciples gave them to the crowds. And all ate and were filled. And they took up what was left over the broken pieces, 12 baskets full. And for those who ate were about 5,000 men, besides women and children. So actually, as I'm reading it for the first time, we call it the story feeding of 5,000, but it's really more than that, right? So 5,000 of men, and of course, in the ancient times, in the first century Rome, women and children were not counted. And so really we should rename that story into a feeding of, 10,000, 15,000, because we consider women and children real people, right? So there's so much in this story that we cannot cover in this short moment. What really kind of captured my heart at this time is verse 20. It says, "And all ate and were filled." And to me, that describes this abundance that God brings into this world, that God shares with us. And I do want to remind you that Jesus's ministry, what he did, the way he acted with people, the healing stories, the miracles that he performed, all of that truly to represent and to show who God was, who God is, to show the character of God. And so this culmination of this story, how first of all people were cured, and then people were fed. So it's this fulfillment of people's needs, and sharing of the abundance that, of course, they were all ate, all filled, and there were 12 baskets of leftovers. And to me, that is what God is doing, bringing now through the church into this world. This image of us eating together as church community or as families, it's been really long time since we gathered together, since we had good old Methodist potlucks. And I know that probably brings about some sadness for us. But it is this ultimate image of this feast that God brings about, that God invites everyone in, that everybody is welcome. Children, women, people of all color, people of all nationalities, from different backgrounds, whatever they have done, they're all welcomed to experience this abundance. And what amazing thing is that that disciples were actually participants in this bringing about of this abundant food and nourishment to the people in need. At first, of course, they were sort of they didn't want to have any kind of part in this, because they just wanted to send the people away to the villages, although they probably knew that those people probably could not afford any food. So that was just not a good idea to send them out. And so Jesus knew that. And again, with his compassion, which is actually one of the first words that shows up here, it's his compassion that that brings about that love, the healing, and the abundance for the people. And so, of course, Jesus says, you don't need to send the crowds away. You give them food to eat. And so they said, well, all we have is just 5 loaves and 2 fish. And then Jesus ordered the crowd to sit down in a certain way. I was thinking about that. Were they social distancing? Did they need to have any space when they were or sit down? And then I was also thinking about just disciples actually participating in giving out the food to those who were hungry. And I think, friends, the church, this is who we are supposed to be. And so what does it mean for us to participate in this miracle of abundance and nourishment, to be sort of this link in the chain between the resources and the people who are in need, who are hungry? We know that the need is so much bigger now, with especially the pandemic and COVID-19 and everything that is happening in the world. So people need us, the church, to continue to be that link in the chain, to continue to bring God's abundance into this world. So this is just our invitation to think about it. What does that mean to be that link in bringing about the abundance of God into this world? And what does it mean maybe on a practical level? There are the chains of food in our world, from the farmers to the distributors to the supermarkets or farmers market. How are we responsible for some of the unequal distribution of food in our world and in our country? How can we make that better? And even in our leftovers, what do we do with our leftovers? And how responsible are we for that food? So, friends, these are just things to reflect on together. Thanks so much for joining me. I truly wish you many, many blessings. I hope you have a good weekend, and that you experience that abundance of God yourself through Thanksgiving, through being with your family, through prayer, through connecting and worship with us. So thank you so much and have a good day. Bye-bye.